we know everything is related and everything is one. But I think my understanding is getting deeper and deeper now, because it's like, okay, the movement of the body, when you breathe, when you move, you create, charges, electricity, you're moving the energy around, right? And when you're eating as well, you are, when you're digesting, there's electricity and being produced. When acid enters in contact with different kind of foods, it breaks down. So that again is energy, is electric. And I remember I was looking at electroculture. I was trying to study to see how it actually works. And the guy says, yeah, fertilizer works, because what happens is when it gets into the ground and when it decomposes, it's the decomposition process that creates electricity, which then goes back to electricity overall. So you're like, we're all doing it, just on a different approach, right? Chemically, yes. Fertilizer, yes. Food, yes. Moving, and purely just electrical signals as well. So it's kind of, again, one and the same, but just attacking it at a different level. So we're all doing it on a different level, and through whichever means that fits best to us, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the level of awareness, like the vocabulary around that subject increases, right? The more knowledge we gain.
Yeah.
The invisible rainbow, which
Well,
I couldn't put down when I went to your place. I'm so grateful that you gave me a copy and that I was able
I
to.
saw that. I was like, okay, she's gonna leave with it. I think she has time to read it.
I was like, this is all the information that I've been trying to articulate, but there's so many studies brought together.
Yeah.
And so having that vocabulary now and that understanding, not just from an experiential level, but from this like natural science approach,
Mhm.
um, it it helps. I guess it increases our consciousness, like our awareness around the subject, and then we can talk about it from more than just one angle.
Yeah, without being scientific about it, he was able to deliver. Arthur was really able to give us so much information, like even about the meridians, about Chinese acupuncture. Like, I don't have to go through the whole course of Chinese acupuncture to understand the basics of it and the most fundamental, important values, principles behind it. It was like, it's just mind blowing. I think this is, if not more important, almost more important than pesticides. Like, we're looking at different tackling, pointing fingers at, let's say, the collapse of bees. We're looking at the pesticides, but now I'm understanding that I'm sure pesticide still does something, but the radio waves were huge,
They
huge,
were
huge.
huge, and most people don't know how huge, how they affected the environment where they were initially being tested and created, right? What's the island that was mentioned?
Isle,
The,
right.
the Isle
Isle,
of Wight.
yeah.
How everything, all the bees died, and when they put up that huge transmitter. So just that is like, you know, I mean, just that alone says so much, right?
But when I try to, I drop little pieces of, little seeds for people sometimes when I talked about invisible rainbow, just things that they can refer to. But I always leave with the ending, just like I end with saying, I don't want to make it a doom and gloom, but to be aware is extremely important. But then he did say towards the end that, after a certain period of time, the bees colonies, kind of recovered over time. So whatever
Mhm.
they did, say they did adapt to it. So yes, that's a positive thing, but he didn't go into how detailed are they adapted to survive, but they're not as good as before. They don't function the same as before. Did their DNA got altered? Is it a better evolution or just a modification to just a lesser versions of the bees and so forth? So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is what I think we've touched on this many times before, but the whole issue with adaptation, right, is we are very adaptive. We can adapt to so many really crazy environments, right? Unhealthy environments. But then because we're so good at adapting, it gives us sometimes more of an ability to turn a blind eye to actually what caused the problem. And then we do find that the problems persist, but then we address them with different forms of, medication, like antidepressive medication, different things where, we're trying to, and then it becomes like band-aids, right? So we adapted to a certain point where we're able to survive, but not continue thriving and really being fully functional as these cosmic beings, right, in the universe. And then, yeah, the part of us that was able to persist on still has kind of limited capacity, and things start to shut down with the body on certain levels, but over a longer period of time. So we don't associate as much to the initial core wound or whatever whatever happened in the environment that caused that really long drawn out process of decay.
Degradation.
Yeah, degradation. And then this is how I see it. And so then we're like, oh, 100 years later, we're like, oh, we have all these problems, but we're so far. It's like one generation from what happened. And it's like, that's a long time. Like a generation is like, we didn't grow up in that. So the knowledge isn't fresh in our minds, and we're no longer associating what we're experiencing to what happened, even though it's the cause of it. So then we're like, well, we got to find solutions to these problems that we're experiencing. And then we start looking for all these, band-aids
But a lot
to,
of it, I think, no matter which route I go down, and generally whether financial or health related, that's where I start. But it's intertwined. Eventually, it leads me to other path, and I find that a lot of it has to do also with history constantly gets whether rewritten or change adapted. So yes, the good thing about reading this book, The Invisible Rainbow, is that you realize like, wow, actually over the course of time he went as far back as 17, I don't know, 50 or 1760s. So there was actually a lot of information, a lot of researchers, a lot of medical practitioners, physicists, they're all researching, except that information seems to be gone, dispersed, spread to the winds. And even yesterday when I'm looking at certain information about a certain leader in Africa, like you had to know exactly what words to put in. If you just put his name in, the information that pops up is everything negative about him, not what he wanted to do for the country, truly what he wanted to do for the country, but it's the Western media painting him so that we can give sort of the government or uh, the okay or to go and invade. And then you're like, wow, it's all again, we have to keep constantly asking the questions. And the patches is like, maybe part of us is a bit lazy, so we look for answers, but then at the same time it's a whole scheme of rewriting and hiding. The part of it, I think, is truly wanted to hide the solution, and the other part is just it's lost. And perhaps, I sometimes I think it might not be 100% on purpose. We also need to take ownership of our own curiosity and wanting to look further and question further. So we can't always blame like, oh yeah, because they hide that information. Like, no, you gotta do your own research. You gotta try and figure it out.
oh my gosh, yeah. And it's you just went into so much there,
Sorry.
because no, that's great. But I think that's just mirroring a lot of our experience, because like I guess the thing is like there's, so you can see, let's say you grow up in a certain town in a certain place in the world, the information that you're given, right, growing up, that you're taught, is going to be, you know eh, the information that culture, the perspective that culture had. And then as you grow up, I find we start to integrate all these different perspectives, right, that other people had. Like sometimes like we're integrating like the history of the victors, right? Or then as we continue to do research, we start integrating the history of you know, those that were conquered, for example. It's like, whoa, two different stories here.
Mhm.
right? And so we're having to really take in more, like not just settle for one version of anything.
Mhm.
Really to be like in that sovereignty is to say, okay, I'm going to look at all these different sides. And I think traveling definitely helps that because it helps open us up to views from, from other cultures and how they saw, for example, our country or our culture. And then it's like, whoops, okay, there's another version here. And then the more we can take in, the more we can have this like global view of what really did happen. But it's like a slow process of like integrating all these different facets. But my mind, when you were speaking, it's really like my mind has been blown like just recently as I continue to delve into these questions of like, what happened in history, what truly occurred at different time periods,
Mhm.
and what I knew, let's say for example, in my teens or my 20s is was completely wrong. It's just completely wrong. And and it's really hard to go through that process, right, of cognitive dissonance where you're like, "Oh my gosh, history was not at all um how we were taught in the history books in school."
Totally.
And then the pain of that too, I find that like for me it's the kind of the yeah, just the pain of seeing the suffering, having to experience the suffering of all these different people throughout these different eras. And, feeling that as I move through this information, that has also been part of this Saturn square sun is like, y- Saturn brings the positive aspects of Saturn is it brings discipline and it brings this kind of willingness to really put things in order, right? And to look at all the information and say, I'm going to order this information and I'm going to really, without bias, try to just see it for what it is and come to a cohesive picture, right? So that I could then move forward with this, like, this strength and um, not so much conviction, but just a sort of internal strength that gets cultivated when we confront real issues in the world. There's a period where it kind of makes you weaker, but then once you gain enough strength in that, keep on expanding, then it's like it actually brings forth action. You've been on this path for a long time. You've been studying so many different um, issues going on around the globe. And um, you manage to kind of come to certain decisions in your life about how you can affect change in your immediate environment and what you wanted to implement. So my question to you is like, how has that journey been um, in taking in, continuing on this path and continuing to learn, continuing to challenge your thoughts and keep on looking, okay, is this really what's happening? Is this really what happened? And then expanding that, how has that shaped your decisions for, your living, the way you live, your lifestyle, and all of that?
Oh, that's huge. Uh, well, I'll try to make it simple and straightforward. I guess I didn't really know um, that I was on this crazy journey. Um, I'd say that when I started, okay, I think the very beginning is when I started closing my heart because I had a long distance relationship. And then I realized that, I thought I was protecting myself, protecting my heart to feeling the hurt because when my partner's not around, then, I'm sad and so forth. So in order to control my emotions, I did, I shut it down. And then it had the immediate effect of affecting my personal life in every aspect, every social aspect, family as, external. And then I realized you can't just do that. And also in the process of that as well, I think I had mentioned to you before, it's that I think growing up, Joe is always trying to survive and trying to match, like my background. I guess it's not just my background, but parents' expectations and the society's expectations to work in a very male oriented mindset, and that was something that I did well, but I always strive to, as a daughter, I always tried to kind of be strong and to do better than my older brothers. So I think I did gain all of that aspect of, just in the material world to do well, so, but to the point that I realized the closing of my, the overworking of the logical side had such a tremendous effect on my body that I think emotionally, when my spirit one day just decided, it's like, okay, you know what, this is not going to go on anymore. And I had this crazy feeling one day, that the world, everything that I was seeing, like my spirit was telling me, everything that you're living and seeing is black and gray. There's no more color in your life because you removed it by removing your feelings. And then I was just this functional, corpse, walking corpse, you know, giving and working and then not getting anything out for my spirit. And I think that's really, truly the beginning of my journey. And then when I started realizing that, I was watching a video and the lady was talking about, the connection of the two brains, the two hemispheres of my brain. It was so crazy. I still remember this day. I had this vivid feeling in my body, the connection, the reconnection. So not only did I sever my heart, the connection to my emotions, I severed the creative part and in the intuitive part of my body, of me. So, what a way to what a way to kind of wake up from the slumber of this crazy society that we live in. So in a way, it's kind of like, wow, our spirit has a way to tell us, our soul has a way to tell us messages. We just have to kind of in tune for. And thank God I woke up not too late, around 27, 8, 9 or so. Yeah. So that took on a crazy journey afterwards. I realized I'm more intuitive. I'm very emotional. Wow, all these things completely blocked off at the beginning. I went from one flip side to the other flip side. And I think slowly questioning and letting my heart grow bigger and bigger and expand and, listening to it. And actually, I think the process is so interesting because even if you want to resist it, slowly, once you embark on this journey, your heart will tell you what it needs to. And my mind, logical side, couldn't take control any longer, even though sometimes I try to. And I think that one of the biggest message I had was when I was working and I didn't want to work anymore, I would look at my screen and I could see the codes, I can see everything, but my whole body refused to work and to function to the point that even if I'm seeing, there's no, signals passing through my mind. So I realized, okay, you can't just will it. There's something stronger than that. So that's another, waking up process. So I think all that to say, kind of coming down to the path I'm on and the decisions I'm making, I think starting to realize that, we have an inner compass that is so strong and we need to listen to that. And also just questioning, like I did a session. I don't know if you remember when I first met you, I said, I don't know what you do, Jessica, but I want a session with you. You just have that
I was
energy.
just in my crazy feminine, like, what? Like, intuitive and this and this and this. Yeah. I don't really know that the start of all that work was really, I was in such a shamanic phase.
Well, I don't know what it was, but your energy, really attracted me. And I was like, okay, I want, and maybe it wasn't the first session, but the second session right after, I remember I had just the strongest intuition and this voice. I had a sentence, it just literally popped out of nowhere. And it said, you are the master of your universe. It's very rare that has such a strong like intuition in a sentence so clear. You know,
Mm,
it's one sentence. And it's like at the time you kind of understand a little bit, but you know, you don't truly understand. And today understanding it more and more is because it's like if we're aligned and we're questioning everything because we don't accept, you know, for example, we don't accept the way the world is going. I don't, you know, it's like for health, for me, it's like I don't accept when I was like, you know, in my late 20s, I had a knee injury. I don't accept people telling me, you know, physiotherapists telling me, that's it, you're going to live with pain with your knee for the rest of your life and you can't fix it. No, something was stronger than me is like, no, I don't accept this. I don't care who you think you are an authority of, but I'm, I don't, you know, and that part of humanity that often gets, I don't know if it's a brainwashing process, it's a submission process, that we accept the reality the way it is and we don't fight back. And you
mhm,
know, and that interview that I would say, because she's in the public sphere, Kathy O'Brien, who had gone through MK Ultra, she explained clearly how the psychological warfare is, and understanding that it's like, you know, she says, you know, 3 generations is all it takes, okay, which is about a course of 100 years. You'll see some of the different agendas that are last usually about 100 years to change the psychology to the point of the DNA of people to create more submissive population.
mhm.
So that kind of goes into the psychological aspect of it as well. And it's like, wow, you know, so there are all these forces that are trying to convince us, deter us, change our perception so that we think we're making the right decisions. And in the end, it's about listening to inner compass and always questioning. And like you said, you know, we're understanding at a level that it keeps evolving all the time. And every new nuances, you know, that cognitive dissonance is real, but it's not as bad as before. I
Mhm.
still have to put down the invisible rainbow sometime because I'm just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It confirms so many things.
Yeah. I've reread so many chapters, like, quite a few times. That's why it's taking so long to get through, because I would just keep on rereading chapters. I'm like, "No, really? Really?" It's just confirmed so much. Yeah.
But I write them down now too. I take
Mhm,
notes like, okay, okay, we confirm. So we're navigating better our sort of our the reality.
mhm.
And you know, it's like it's kind of hard to express this to people who haven't asked these questions, but the way that I've always learned, and for me, which started was the beginning of the journey has also a health aspect of it.
Mhm, mhm.
So I was always very sensitive to food that I was taking, but I didn't realize that till the point I, you know, anyway, I had some stomach issues. And after I figured it out, I fixed it. It's like, okay, well, I have to be careful on what I intake. So I
Mhm.
guess in a sense, that sensibility is a gift because it forced me throughout the years to just add one more regimen that is better for my health. One more thing, one more thing. So it's a gradual thing. I understand that trying to tell someone who's been eating the standard North American style way of food and a lot of fast food, let's say, it's extreme,
Processed food. Mhm.
it's so hard to remove that. And maybe I'm thinking, you know, on top of the psychological warfare, the food has a chemical effect, you know, on our body as well. So if
Yeah, it
we're,
goes back to the that electric exchange with the food and the environment and, yeah, our connection to the cosmos.
yeah,
It's
so
there.
forget what's in the air, like what you're intaking is affecting your psychology, your electrical circuits, your wow. So we're being it's like a cleansing process spiritually, physically, woo, electronically. It's so intense, but
Mhm. Yeah, I
it's
suppose that also laid the bricks, the foundation for you to, like, I'm thinking in terms of lifestyle choices that you made. One of them is, you invest a lot of time in your exceptional, beautiful, incredible gardens, where you're providing food for yourself and your partner. And I guess that laid the foundation for you to make those choices and then to actually manifest them out into your life in the world.
Yeah, because for me, I know, it's like when I feel good in my body, okay, perhaps you can go into the gene keys and the human design. There's something that gets activated, like
But
your
you have gate 57 at your core, your SQ, spiritual quotient. So
so
that's
like
intense.
your body is like alive and it's like, whoa, beaming, and it's like, okay, I can do this. So you have that sense of energy. So yes, and so I I don't know if everybody's affected like that, but for me, yeah. So that's so important. But I
There's a
hope
lot of work and dedication as well in making these lifestyle choices. So anyone who's a farmer who works closely with the land and who is self-sustaining, provides for themselves, knows the work involved in actually, you know, walking the talk on that level with growing your own food, the preserves, the homesteading. It's a huge process, right? So, in order to invest that much time, there has to be a lot of reason, a lot of motivation coming from, you know, somewhere deeper with levels of awareness that we can have about, how it's truly affecting us. And that sort of motivates us to be like, okay, yes, I am going to invest all this time and energy.
you're affected. Like we don't see, like I think part of it is our frequency, right? Where we think what we don't see is not there, or are we taught that, or because our frequency is so low, it's a mixture of everything. But I mean, nature for me is, yes, it's a lot to do with growing for me, but it's my interaction with nature that teaches me so much. Like one time I had such a profound, like just realization when I was collecting tomato seeds for the next season. And I put them all out because you have to dry them. I put them all out on a plate. And I think I might have sent you that one time, but and it's like from one tomato, I had more than enough to fill a plate. And I was just looking at it. I'm like, oh my God, I can't plant all that. Ah, she's telling us I am abundant. I'm so abundant. You can't even grow all of that. So it's like,
Hmm.
what's this teaching, this societal teaching, quote, the belief that we don't have enough. There's not enough to go around. Limitation belief.
Uh-huh.
So that is huge. Like, can we
Hmm.
break that through to just teach that to children?
Hmm.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
And that's what that brought me down the road of primal water, that there's more water around. We just, you need to know how to dig it. And it's just the whole ball game when you approach your paradigm shifts.
Hmm.
Again, refusing to believe the magic, what you're being told.
Refuse to believe what you've been told. That is such a powerful message that keeps on coming up this week. And, I'm so happy that this has weaved itself into the conversation because it's just that we need to continue to cultivate that curiosity to just keep on reaching outside, right? And saying, okay, yeah, okay, I got this information, I've integrated a certain amount of knowledge. Now let me just like reach out a little bit further. Oh, it's a little bit uncomfortable going and, looking at that material or or opening that book. Well, you just keep on, stretching and expanding that awareness because you're right, there's so many beliefs within our society that are completely false, right? And this can go really deep.
Oh,
Um, you were speaking earlier about, the taking for granted what people in authority, right, tell us. This is a huge one. It's a huge one because we're born as children and we have immediately someone who takes care of us that we can't survive without that care. So there's this automatic, coupling that happens, right? The psychological embedding that takes place where, we need to be, uh, our survival depends on a caregiver or a person of authority outside of ourselves. Like it's so innate, right? With the whole being born as a baby, as an infant, you can't, you're like helpless. So it really stems from there, right? And so it's a soft, I think it's like, it has to come in as a soft challenge because my south node is the gate of shock. like, I can't shock myself into awakening anymore at this point. I'm too old. And I can't shock others into awakening because that path never really worked well for me. Being in my south node, but it's this kind of soft sort of it's a softening to the idea that, perhaps some of the things that our parents did weren't based in the right belief systems, right? It starts there. I think that's where the healing, we have to go back and look at, well, yeah, actually, our parents as children are everything to us, and we just believe everything that's told to us, and we have to break through that barrier, which is a very challenging barrier to break through at a certain age, really moving through that and the pain of that. There's like this kind of feeling of separating ourselves from ourselves, right? And then softening to the idea that, yeah, we're all in this process of evolution, and it's not like there's no need to really confront people on that level. It's like we're all just evolving through the generations, and honoring that the evolution is about opening up and continuing to unearth some of the false beliefs that we have held on to, right, through through the development of society. And so for me, it's like this becoming a really soft process, um and coming into ownership with the beliefs that I want to take in. Sort of touches on like that conversation we had about people have these ideas, and you're talking with people, and then they'll kind of, let's say, share something with you that they have a strong belief of, that might cause that person, and we're talking about like subtle things, right? Not even like really intense things, just subtle things, subtle comments, people that are worrying about things, people that have, beliefs from their childhood or from their upbringing and from their, education, that just sort of, there's this constant interplay with ourselves and other people, and having to navigate, like, okay, they're sending that belief system my way. Well, if I accept that, oh, that means that to a certain extent, maybe I will develop certain health issues, or maybe, that would cause me to fall into a state of powerlessness. And so we're having to navigate that on such a huge level. Like it's not even with the big things; it's every day intertwined into every interaction.
But
And
now
so,
you
yeah,
dive into something. I almost see it differently now, in the sense that when somebody says something to us, now I'm seeing it spiritually. Like, it could be, a test, or it could be actually, on a like I said, on a spiritual level. It could be because we made certain decisions that are not in line with ourselves, which gives certain power, well, certain dark forces to come in and tweak us, tempt us, or, so wow, like when you look at existence at that level, it's not just your mental. Well, yes, there's still got all your mental thoughts, but it's a it's more challenging this way. It's like, did this person truly want to influence you, negatively, innocently? Was it sent by something else, or is it just a test in the end for you, to see, and we need to have that discernment to know, okay, is this for my own growth? So there's so many things that comes with that, and that today I'm understanding it also on a different level. I don't say I can practice it all the time, but it's like it hurled another
I
like.
think that's really good point, like the different layers to that, right? And that's what we're navigating through, those layers. And sometimes it is about a test or a challenge, right? And really taking that in, because that's where like the closed-mindedness happens, right? Too. That's where it happens too, is like, oh, that belief system is rubbing up against my belief system. But I'm really, yeah. So then going in and being like, okay, what is that rubbing up against in me?
Mhm.
Right. And yeah, we can, there's a lot there. I'm like, whoa, there's a lot there.
You brought me somewhere else,
I,
but we can bring it back to a more physical level. But I think when you did the vortex, when I was in, okay, when I was abroad, we did a work on, what's our inner vortex and what's the desire that we have, the strongest desire. And when you drew the drawing for me, I read it out loud. I remember it was so intense. The minute I said it, I'm still having the emotions too. It's so powerful because it was about breaking free of the enslavement for humanity, basically, of the
Hmm.
bondage.
Hmm.
And I think, um, you know, today I'm understanding it a bit more with the gene keys and the human design because it's about my life's work is revolution and rebirth. And in a way, I do really want to create that because the basis of it for me is I refuse, what's out there. I want to create something new. And that is so strong in me, like so strong. My whole energy field, my whole emotion gets fired up, and I really need to control that because I can, I hear certain things of other people and I really have to control that energy within me because, but it doesn't come from a negative source, but it can sound negative because I just want to kind of, sometimes I just want to slap them and like, okay, come on, wake up. Like we're moving on. Like, okay, stop. We need to bring this forward because that's the only way, but that's more on a mundane level, right? So okay, we need to stop believing in the manipulation of climate change, the like all stories are completely distorted to make us believe.
Yeah, and there's also two sides. This is, the devil's advocate. I'm always working on understanding both sides. And because these narratives get so entrenched by different political groups, they become all of a sudden that whole topic becomes one-sided. And
Okay.
it's really frustrating, right? Because, yeah, we need to take care of the globe. We need to take care of the earth, right? The bioregenesis is happening on, it needs to happen with our waters, but a lot of it has to do with these bigger corporations dumping, right? Chemicals and so on and so forth. So there's a distinction there, and I think every topic there can be a distinction made, but when there's so much manipulation behind any one given narrative, all of a sudden it becomes saturated with that political identity or with that group narrative that you can no longer talk about it in any other way, right? So it's like, yeah, uh, don't hijack. It's like when it gets hijacked in the media, all of a sudden it's like you can't have any other conversation around it because people are automatically going to think if you're talking about, um, you know, anything related to pollution in the planet, that have alliances with a certain political point of view,
Mhm,
when that's not true at all, right? Like we need to just kind of open that up, I think, like in terms of dialoguing, right, on these like global stages, and not allow them to steal certain narratives and really have certain topics be taken over by certain groups. Like, I'm so tired of that, right? Because then it makes things, it just creates more division between every group. This is what we're breaking down, and I think through continuing to talk and open up the discussion with people on all these different levels really helps, because it's like, yeah, we don't have to take on the ideologies of these different groups in society, and have them hijack our everyday conversation and topics that relate to so many different things,
mhm,
you know it's really challenging on that level, and that's where the division happened in society. So, especially over the last 3 years, there was so much division and tribal wars based on the hijacking of different topics. And then all of a sudden, any mention of that topic would just all of it would open up the floodgates to everything else that was, that was behind that. Do you know what I'm saying?
oh yes, yes, as mundane as the little, places that I volunteer at. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna volunteer it, like whether you want it or not. The universal forces are everywhere, regardless if you're in a big city or you're a small town. You're on one polar opposite of the world to the other. We're all connected. It's all affecting us. But what I try to do when I'm first, I need to calm down my emotions. Whew, well, that's what I have to deal with. And then second is bring it back to the heart and show them that we're actually, to the people who think we're oppressors or aggressors, that having a different opinion is not necessarily a bad thing. And that in the end, I'm just trying to see a different angle, and that we're all here to protect, to protect whether the environment, to protect the people, to protect our resources, and to go from the heart, and it's easier when I can just move that direction towards also, if not health. Again, I always go back to health because I'm like, it's so hard to talk to people about other things because it has so many trigger points, and they get triggered, then they trigger me, and it's this crazy thing. But I've seen that throughout time and time again when I go through health and nature, there's way less resistance. And if the lesson can be learned through there, it's like, just for example, I'm just, I say all these monies are being, okay, printed. Actually, they are being printed, but most people don't know that. But printed and being sent to different places all over the world for war purposes, but supposedly to protect certain people, or even just for infrastructure, maybe that doesn't need to a big art project, or even just certain applications, like software applications that have very short term uses, all that promotional money. Like if we just take a portion of that and put it into health for such a, give all farmers, like all local organic farmers, give them the funding, help them so that we can buy local. So local means less transport, so less energy resources. You want to talk about climate change, less usage of that. Okay, less pesticide because they know how to grow the land. And then when you eat well already, you need less hospitals, you need less medical doctors, you need less nurses, you have less fire to extinguish, you don't need these gigantic super expensive hospitals. It clicked. People are like, oh yeah. I'm like, yeah, that's a real solution. Like all these extra, medicines, vaccines, or it sounds good, but it's a patch. You're not, the fundamentals of what you eat is already shattered. So how you're just putting the patch and patch and patch, and those patch are expensive.
This is going back to where we started with this adaptation, right? And a lot of the conversations that we've had, I find we find ourselves digging back to the root, right? Because it's really, addressing anything in society isn't about addressing the symptoms of that problem. It really comes down to addressing the root of the problem. And you go to the root, you save like, eons of time. And the whole of society changes, right? Just by making those simple changes at the root. It's so powerful. And yet we don't do it, right? And so this is my kind of, share with any listener regarding the frustrations of dealing with some of the issues that we're facing today. Don't get angry at the people who are exhibiting or the exaggeration of that problem, right? That are really like the worst examples of that problem. Go to the root of what caused that and then focus all actions towards that, right? It completely changes everything to say, I'm going to look, okay, well, what is causing this problem? Okay, so it's different companies producing different chemicals, usage of different pesticides, systemic problems, like you were saying, based on just the food and what we put in our body on that level, and then where the money's going. If we take the money and we put it there, then all of those, like the 10 layers of problems that, unfold from that one decision won't be there. Right? Like it's so powerful. It is
It's like
so
it's so
freaking
simple. Sometimes you're
powerful.
like, oh, really? Yeah. but no, we're the supposed authorities are not going that route because it's not profitable.
That's it.
They're
We
not.
have to suffer for another thousands of years because it's not profitable.
The
It's
decision
like,
makers can't, it's like when I watch my mom doing all the, she would render the fat and then reuse the fat and cook with it. It's like sometimes I look at, I'm like, I laugh. I'm like, now I understand. Companies don't like people like you because they can't sell oil to you. They can't sell all these extra things that we don't need. But yes, we do need the cooking oil. But I'm just saying, like when you produce all of that, they can't sell it to you, and they don't want that. And not just the sellers and all the people around it. And I will name because politicians in general, they get so many kickbacks. And now
mhm,
today, the government officials, like whether we want to admit or not, I mean, we all know, almost everyone knows, even children nowadays know that, there is always corruption in politics. We just accept it. And it becomes this accepted norm. It's like we
mhm.
all, because it's like it's so corrupted, we can't break it, we just accept it. Bravo. This is what we're showing to the children. It's how it is, and just do your life, and let's get on.
We're having to continue to work and orient ourselves in that direction versus continuing to complain about the symptoms that the initial problem caused, right? It's like we can talk all day about, the symptoms that we're seeing in society based on those root problems. But like as long as the conversation keeps orienting itself towards the root problem, and then like solutions can start, it's like, well, I'm tired of this. I'm gonna start using things, learning how to work with what's at hand. So there's an education process, like we're having to educate each other. That's the first part. And then once the education is done, there's like the acceptance, which kind of takes a while to settle in, right? That the acceptance of what we're learning, like after the cognitive dissonance, is sort of the pain, right? That pain that comes in, and it's like, oh, the betrayal, right? The betrayal of what we've done as a whole, as a group in society, and how we've made these like really poor decisions over time based on profit, based on continuing to increase profit and diminish costs. And then, you know, that those little decisions over time just remove the humanity from what we're doing on a very subtle level, because people are looking at numbers and
Mhm.
they're looking at, oh, I'm just going to, start sourcing from here, or I'm going to start incorporating this production method, which actually removes like 50% of the nutrition, but it's going to save us X amount of money and time. And so we're just going to do that because, whoa, that brings, that increases the yearly, the yearly profits to like, 100,000.
Mhm.
Right. And it starts slowly like that. And it's, this is when small companies jump to the bigger sizes. They start making all these crazy decisions based on business models that were taught to them, either in business school or that are just disconnected
Mhm.
from the actual effects of what those are going to have on society as a whole. So it's like this disconnection from a wider view, from this like global view of things. So a lot of it is not malicious. A lot of it is it's based on, it's a very instinctual, perhaps more rooted in solipsism or greed or
Survival, but for their group, their inner group, right? Which is them and their immediate family generally,
yeah.
and to the detriment of others. But yeah.
Yeah, and that immediate family could be also whatever business association they're with. I'm not going to get into all the different groups, but I'm thinking there's a lot of different groups that people associate with, and then they can create different movements in the market, trends to generate profits and so on and so forth. I've seen, that side of things, and so the decisions become even more disconnected from actually how they're having an effect. It just becomes purely focused on money. And it's like there's no more questioning, like, okay, how is this actually going to affect people long term? How is this going to affect the world long term? And so coming back to that space where we're re-questioning things on that level and really going to the root of it, um, like, this is where I want to kind of play in that energy. It's like, how do we bring these big corporations, back to that very, like, to the humility of, like, of their interconnectedness to all things. This is kind of like where the energy needs to move in society with all of these different groups. So, I'm just like inviting the energy there now.
Two things to say to that. I'll just write it down. Yes, frequency and money. Because of my research and my belief that, no, and my disbelief and refusing to believe that there's no other solutions for my health, I found so many other things that can easily reverse your condition, help, oxygenize your body, alkalinize your body, create the necessity electricity in your body so for your body to self-heal. Oh my God. And it's so mind-blowing, and they cost nearly nothing. And if you look into history of it, a lot of it has been discovered a long time ago. And it's like on and on for the teeth, for any issues, internal issues. As you know, I've healed my hives with one of them. And now there's like nail fungus, there's like even cancer, and there's so many, like, even it's like, okay, my belief is there. I called it in, and yes, I found them. So it's like all these things that, again, it's such huge paradigm belief that if you bring it to people to be like, no, no. So it's breaking that barrier as well while we're looking for solutions. Mind you, at the same time, like, the solutions are there. We just can't see it. We just refuse to see it.
I think what you said there that was really, really important is that talking about, okay, these solutions with these corporations and how to get in there and all that, it really comes back down to our power, like our reach of power is where we place our money, the choices that we make. Do we buy, right? Do we buy that food? Do we support that corporation? Do we support that company? Do we support that brand? Blah, 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 blah. Where we put our purchasing power, is really our greatest, where we have greatest control over what proliferates and what continues to, grow and make profit in the world and what doesn't.
Mm.
So becoming so it comes back down to education, and it comes back down to conscious choices. Like our education informs our choices and our decisions. So really it comes back down to education. I think we've we're trying to solve the world problems today. Okay, it comes back down to education, and then having that information. Because if a bunch of people in the world are suffering, right, and they're legitimately suffering and experience within themselves, and they can't relate it to the cause, right, then there's a big issue there, and then it just people will continue to look for solutions on that suffering, but then never really preventing it from occurring to future generations. Right. And this goes deep, right? This goes into a lot of different topics that are very touchy, and that, there's so many things that people can't even talk about, right? Like we were saying.
That's the problem too. That's,
So
yeah.
heated. Yeah.
Yeah. You have these solutions, and they're hidden, tucked away, and demonized, and then created all kinds of weird, they have stories of crazy side effects, or people have died from it. And it's like, maybe some of that is true, but it's about misuse, right? We don't talk about the misuse of medicine, like traditional allopathic medicine. There are tons of people who die from misdiagnosis by their doctors.
All the time. All the
Yeah.
time.
And we don't make a big fuss out of it, but if this alternative solution that some one person died, it's like, oh my God, the heaven is falling.
Mhm.
Wow, wow, where are we at? Like, again, it's about this discernment. Is this our system of belief? Someone's going to come here and take care of us, or are we going to take care of ourselves?
Yeah, that right there. Is someone going to come take care of us? No, we know that. Yeah. So, I think again, another gap. So we have education, we have making the proper decisions, and then that, I know that you're doing some volunteer work, and, I think it's about really coming back with a lot of this knowledge, and then moving into society again and having, taking roles and stances within different groups, within the community, within society, to then be able to affect change through educating boards, through educating. And that's where I feel there's a lot of people that have gone through, spending a huge amount of time, a few years, like, to a decade or two, really learning about some of the big issues affecting the world, stay stuck in this kind of mode of isolation because of the stark contrast between the experience that they're having after that, and the experience that other people are having, just on a general level. And then there's a sort of, the isolation is based on this kind of like, it's a painful contrast, right? To just not feel um, the belonging, right? That sense of belonging with the group anymore, because the beliefs are so different. And there's been a different type of growth where the tree grows, the branches are growing in different directions. And so I find for me, it's really, I'm trying to work that level of reintegration, um, while maintaining my integrity, while maintaining what I've learned, and being able to like hold that, like be able to, hold strong in that understanding or those beliefs, and then those truths really, and then move forward and reintegrate. Like that's a delicate dance that could take, upwards of a decade as well. So there's all these big kind of phases that happen, big cycles and big phases that usually take up to like a decade. I mean, some people just bullet right through it, and or they happen to be in a position in their life and society where they're able to, they go through that kind of quick awakening, and they're already there in position, and they're like, okay, I'm going to make good use of where I'm at. And then they usually get black sheeped, and they usually get thrown off the board. And that's the issue too, right? It again, it's anything that's different or is a heretic.
Yeah.
Like, and the heretics were always right in retrospect. The heretics were always the ones that we, venerate, and that we talk about, how they were able to change that paradigm, but really over time, and often after they were gone. It's not like you see the rewards really during your lifetime. And this ties into actually my gate 32 in my North Node subconscious side is, it's all about this endurance and preservation. So the continuity has to do with preservation and preserving what is real and what is true, and bringing that forward, like, and venerating and honoring the knowledge of our ancestors, the wisdom, this ancient wisdom that we have within us, that is connected to that, it's connected to things beyond the movements in society, the trends, the times that we're in. It's really connected to something deeper that is a part of the grander cycles. And that, it's basically these truths that can't be changed, right? There's certain universal laws, if you will, that are natural laws that can't be altered, right? And the further we try in society, the further we move away from them, the more problems we create. And so we're having to constantly go back, or nature will pull us back, and we resynchronize with these natural laws again, because we have no choice if we want to persist on and carry on and, exist as a human species. So that preserving, what is good in the world. And it's like that the choices you make with your lifestyle, I honor you for that. And I know that those choices are made from this kind of place, which I connect with gate 32, which is like, it's preservation of ancient wisdom, So over time, it feels like, nothing's happening, right? We're making these small, well, they're not small movements, but we're making decisions that create lifestyles. And it feels like, okay, this isn't going to impact society. This isn't going to change society. But over the course of time, it does. And in that gate, the reason why I brought it up was it speaks of the old man who keeps on just planting trees. That's all he does his whole life. But eventually, no one knows about him. But at the end of his life, he's, there's a huge forest. And after many different changes happen in society, different governments come in, they leave, people come, they take they cut down the trees, they make lumber with it. He just keeps on planting, he just keeps on going, and he's just on his path, and he's doing what he knows he has to do because he's in alignment with his core frequency and his truth, his authenticity. And then by doing that, eventually, it does pay off, but it's not something we see immediate rewards for. And that's where people, I think, also have to realize is the work is hard, and it's the persistence over time that, it is a selfless act. It is an act of leaving an imprint for others to be able to synchronize with, and pick up on and learn from and be educated by, to carry that on through through the legacy and the lineage of that action. So so there's all these movements, and it doesn't necessarily happen. We want it to happen quicker. We want to see the changes. Yes.
I have two great examples for that in, in the physical that I've seen that I remember. Well, one of them for me is like, I know kids these days often don't have that connection with nature. Like, oh, this carrots come from the ground, and this comes from where they buy it from the grocery, and that's it. So I remember hearing that on some parents, and I'm like, oh my God, we have, like you said, going back to education, we need to teach the children, have them put their hands in the ground, have them understand, because children have that ability and they're like super interested, most of them, when they're really young. So one of my friends, she's not per se spiritual, but we've been able to stay friends because she has very open mind, and she just laughs it off, and she's like, okay, and she'll bring her kids, and I make a point like, okay, let's take out the I left some garlic for them to pull, have the experience of pulling out the garlic.
Mm-hmm.
And then have the
Awesome.
experience pulling the carrots out, like, you put it, it's so fun. It's like, what's underneath, you don't know, it's a surprise, and it's that kids wonder. And then the other day she sent me back pictures, of how she had a great time here in the forest, and one of the pics is both kids eating the carrots, and it's like, like you said, it's some things like you don't see right away, but I'm sure it has an everlasting effect on these kids, because we know our childhood experiences impact us so much, and it's a foundation. So if we're able to, even if it's just two kids, and it's something, and she'll talk to her friends maybe, and I know she was never too interested in growing vegetables, but now because of me, she asked, and she's growing. She did garlic now, and she expanded her garlic. She even doing potatoes, that's just a friend. And the same friend, I'll just mention another thing, was really interesting, because her best friend is a pharmacist, and her friend pharmacist had gone through this huge ordeal of um a type of cancer. Okay, I think I won't even mention the type of cancer. Anyway, she gone through all the therapies, and now she's recovering slowly. And I, on the other hand, is completely natural, right? I'm the opposite of her other friend. And I remember when she left my place one day, and she asked me a question. She's like, I love it how I come here and you give me completely different views, of being healthy or of the world in general. And then she's like, because my friend gives me her perspective, which is what she learned through school, and then you give me the other side. And then all I said was to that is that, well, we're both in health, in quote unquote. And I just asked her, so what's the state of her health versus the state of my health? And she just like had this huge silence, and she, it's like, okay, well, leading by example. It's, like, I don't need to convince her what I'm doing is right or not. She sees how I'm living, how
Hmm.
my health is, and
Hmm.
that's all I have to say.
Yeah. I want to thank you for sharing that. I think that's really powerful, right? It really is about these being the living embodiments. Like that's a phrase that's been thrown around so much, but that's what it truly is. And it comes down to making hard decisions about where we're going to put our energy at the end of the day. And there's a certain amount of dedication and hard work that is involved. And it's also, there's a sacrifice and there's adjustments, true adjustments and choices in life. That's where the example is carries on, and that's the legacy, right? It's really about making these fine-tuned decisions, which brings me into wanting to talk about all this sacred geometry
Mm.
that you have in your home. And it's very subtle. It's like, it's not kind of like pictures of different sacred geometry that you have up. It's really built into the structure and the architecture of the home, the architecture of the gardens. And I feel that whenever I do go to your place, I experience that sacred geometry. I experience, well, the fact that, your home was made with your bare hands, with your partner's hands. Like your man actually made the home that you live in, which is absolutely incredible. And you made the gardens, and, you both worked on everything together. But this beauty of crafting things, right, with your own minds and your own souls, and building it up from scratch, and then including these beautiful details where, when you purchase a home, you don't have those details. That soul isn't embedded in the place. And um, the little things that make it different, right? That come from that level of awareness or consciousness that the person can have as they're building isn't there when you're just buying like a cookie cutter model home. So I feel that there is a special energy in your home and around your home and in the gardens. And it really does affect me on on this bioenergetic level. Like I feel my metabolism changes,
Mm.
my just my emotional state, my mental state changes,
Oh, wow.
right? And how I feel, just how I feel
Mm.
all changes. And it's like this therapeutic session of being immersed in this beautiful energy, as well as your energy. But the home, I know that it plays a huge role. And with
Yeah.
the animals, with the animals in the environment coming to see you and visit you. I mean, it's just so beautiful what you've created. And so I don't know if there's anything that you want to share on that level to inspire people in using, sacred geometry in the construction of their home, or even in just incorporating into a home that they already have.
Oof. I think this is a completely new process for me. Actually, when you're talking about working with the hands, I know that for me, gardening has very rewarding because from my past experience in terms of career has, IT definitely I don't do anything with my hands. So it's never really gratifying the same way as today I can collect, harvest things and do, and my partner building the house, it's all about creating in the physical. But in terms of giving my advice, I think I was even super new to this. Is more the challenging. It was actually really challenging at first. It's like, oh, you get to create. Like I never got to create or decide what I want in a house. You just like you said, you buy a cookie cutter. I had to also break out of that and like, no, you don't have to buy it. You can, my first instinct was to reach out and buy something. And it's like, no, you have to stop that instinct. Again, it's not even an instinct, it's a behavior, right? A learned behavior pattern. And break that and say, no, I can think about what I want to do and make it. Okay, so that's one level. And it took several times. It's like, oh, this is broken. So what do? I go buy. No, you don't just have to buy. There's different ways about it. Okay, breaking another pattern. But I can't say I'm pro at creating sacred geometry. I don't know that I'm doing it as I go, but maybe it has to do with just the concept of, yin and yang lines. I find that it's a natural process within me, and when it's too much straight lines, I'm like, I want curves. I want some curves to appear somewhere. And with that obsession or that need, inner need, it's like, okay, I start drawing it and then, making my partner make it. He's not always happy about it. He's like, it's so much easier if it's a straight line. I say, I know, but but it's a
Something about the energy, that it's like the spirals and the curvature helps the energy move and circulate, right? This is what I feel. I feel like the energy is moving and clearing and washing the auric field. Like that's the feeling that I get. And of course, like the river having, the river there, it's really like it just clears everything out. But really the curves, which we don't incorporate, in different countries. It's really a part of their architecture for different cultures. And we've lost that here, and the squares just don't do it for me.
yeah.
They just don't do it for me. It's like, give me some curves, right? Give me, and then the energy just, you feel like it's flowing, it's moving, it's alive, right? And then the structure becomes alive. I'm getting so excited just talking about it. But yeah,
So I think it's
yeah.
the weaving your magic, perhaps. Like, I didn't used to think that, but now it's like, okay, when you put your mind to it and you believe and you want it for a good reason, right? You're not harming anyone. You're doing it for you, for the energy, and as well, I think part of it is intention, but I'm not sure how they happen, but it happened.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I think a lot of things, when we're just in our authenticity and when we're in alignment, we just start creating really powerful things around us. And we don't even know. It's like not even, I'm like, I want to create this. It just comes out naturally and boom, it's like all of a sudden this miraculous sacred geometry is around you
Mm.
because you were in alignment with that true soul connection, which is driving you towards creating things that are healthy around you. And so it's a beautiful thing to know that, that stuff comes out naturally. This knowledge, this wisdom that's within us, it just starts coming out.
I wanted to mention that 30 gate 32, I have it twice in Pluto.
Oh, you have both Pluto on your subconscious and conscious. Pluto is such an important position for those listening who are looking at their human design or looking at their astrological chart. Pluto is the gate to self-knowledge. It's really what's fueling self-awareness and self-knowledge.
Hmm. Okay.
So if we look at it from that point of view, which most people agree with, most people who, have studied Pluto more elaborately, see it as that type of portal. It's really pushing us onto our path more and more. So that means that you're tapping into what is worth preserving
Observing.
and bringing forth is your way of understanding the self even deeper. And gate 32 taps into legacy. It taps into DNA, it taps into ancestral wisdom, and it is a shamanic gate. At the root, it is about going beyond the death and rebirth cycle and tapping into what is lasting.
What is lasting for
What
serenity?
is lasting? Yeah. And then that's what needs to be preserved. Inspired me so much with everything that you've implemented in your own life, in your lifestyle, in your home, and your being, and just the whole thing. So I'm grateful to have you on and share you with the audience that I have on here. And I hope that it inspires some of our listeners to continue on their path as well.
I also want to extend my gratitude to you for having faith in me, for seeing my value to the community. I guess what I don't have, I'm slowly coming to my North Node. I've always, I don't like to be in public. I don't like to be in the sphere. I've always kind of just stay in the background and observe. I'm very much of an observer. And now I think this propels me. I think the drive is so strong, and thank you for believing in me and, like, having a voice out. I mean, I'm kind of being forced left and right to have my voice at the same time, but it's so nice to have encouragement and belief and trust um, and thank you throughout the years to
Thank
with
you.
your inspirations. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, we've really, and I think that's the true definition of tribe is kind of this loving environment, but where we can challenge each other and challenge each other and sort of, in a sense, hold each other accountable to our goals, our dreams, where we want to go, what we're implementing, and then bear witness to those changes within another is such a beautiful process. It
Mm.
really is so incredible. So thank you. I've seen so many beautiful things, changes, and things that you just set out to do and then have done, and really incredible.
If you'd like to book a session with me, you can go to www.inspiringplayfulevolutions, where I have a bunch of service offerings. I'd love to support you on your path as you step into your role. And I have different service offerings to accommodate different needs and budgets. So please feel free to reach out. Take care. Wishing everybody an awesome transition into December 2023.